Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it just a few more minutes to see if anyone else is going to join in, and then we'll get started. All righty. Thank y'all for joining us this morning. We're going to go through the contract request. Tammy's going to demonstrate kind of how to fill it out, some common things that we see, answer any questions that y'all might have. First, what I want to share is when to use the contract request. So for Texas A&M, some other system members do it a little bit differently, but for us, you'll either submit the contract request or the requisition. The requisition is going to be used anytime you want to encumber those funds. So if you're making a purchase and you want to encumber those funds, we highly recommend that you do that whenever you're making a purchase for a variety of reasons, from front-end approval on the requisition, speeds up invoice processing. It puts the purchase on the books. There's all kinds of fun reasons why we would want those purchases to be done on a requisition. The contract request does not link to Famous at all. So you're not going to see an encumbrance in Canopy. You're not going to see anything that gets put on the books. It's just going to go through the approval process and then arrive for processing. So a department right now has the option to do a contract request or a requisition if the purchase is less than $25,000 and it's not software related. So if it's a purchase greater than $25,000, the delegated limit, it needs to go on a requisition. If it's a non-monetary or a revenue generating contract, then the contract request is the appropriate mechanism to get that submitted, approved, and routed. Are there any questions about when to use the requisition and when to use the contract request? All right, so with that out of the way, I did want to mention we are making some small tweaks to our website. Like these trainings that are, I think this one's recording. We're uploading some of our trainings to our websites. We're adding some frequently asked questions. So it's a good idea to visit the website periodically, see what's been added. We'll be updating the trainings from time to time. The quick reference guides, that will be your most current location to go find those resources. So without further ado, Miss Tammy, are you there and ready?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. So Miss Tammy's going to go ahead and share her screen. She's going to walk us through the contract request process. I'll be monitoring chat for any questions. And Tammy, I'll jump in if there's something pertinent to that came through on chat. But
Okay.
Miss Tammy Prater handles all of our contract requests that come through. She monitors the workflows, does a lot of the training for it. So if you've got a contract request question or situation scenario, she'd be the best one to reach out to review that. So Ms. Tammy, it's all yours.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just created a test request and filled out a few fields real quick, so you didn't have to watch me type the whole time. This is a basic contract request. I'm answering this one as non-monetary, and scope of work from your contract, it can either, most of the time people copy like the scope of work, or they'll say see attached with the attachment. And I'm gonna say this is a new request with the start date and the end date. And the start date, I see sometimes where the start date is entered as the date the person is entering the request instead of the actual start date of the contract. And also no expiration date. 99% of contracts have an expiration date, so we have to go in and fix those occasionally. And I'm gonna say that the vendor provided the contract to us. We're not doing a template on this one. And then our next screen is our EIR questions. If it's software, hardware related, I'm gonna say that this one is not related to EIR. One of the things that I'm still seeing is not drilling down, and this is just a term we came up with, but not drilling down to the department level. So always make sure that you select your system member number, and then to drill down, click on the magnifying glass. You'll go to your system member number, or I'm sorry, your system name. And I'm going to our division, Finance and Business Services, and then contract administration. And you'll drill down until you don't see any more arrows, and then you'll select the dot next to your department name. And then you will save changes. This is very important for the routing of the contract request workflow. And then I've filled out the department contact information, and then you can either hit save, and you'll see this pops up at the top, or you can hit next. Either one will save the information. The next issue, or next thing that we see, is the second party name. You'll see us use Dealers Electric on demos a lot. And Dealers Electric is in AggieBuy. I'm going to search for Dealers Electric in AggieBuy, and I see that they're set up here. I'm going to click the summary, and I want to verify this is the address that's on my contract. It could be different, and there is another way to search for addresses in AggieBuy, but sometimes you could see 20 or 30 addresses here, and you can just click each one to see the different addresses. But most common, the address is here. If the vendor has not provided a W-9, there most likely there will not be an address listed here. So I'm going to copy. You could copy any of these. You could copy the supplier name. I would rather choose the Jagger supplier ID or the supplier ID if one is available. There will not be the supplier ID, the X number, if there's not been a W-9 provided for that company, that vendor. And then you can either paste it and select the vendor here, or you can click on the magnifying glass, paste your vendor number there, supplier number there, and then select your Dealers Electric, and then save. And this vendor is an AggieBuy. I do not have to put new supplier. It does not need to go to vendor setup to be created. And I filled out the rest of the department information. I'm sorry, vendor information. And one thing that's real important is to include the individual's email address, not a generic shared mailbox, because sometimes those aren't monitored as closely as a individual's mailbox. And then the next thing you would do is make sure you have all green check boxes. And then you would complete the request, and then it comes to our inbox to be reviewed by our department. Real quick, I want to show you, this is the workflow. This workflow looks great. It does not have a stop. On my side, I'm gonna check and make sure that there's someone in each workflow step. This is just something that we do on our end in case there were changes made to a workflow, a department's workflow. If there's someone missing, if there's no one listed as an approver, I need to get with the department and find out who should be in that role. And you'll see, if y'all are familiar with the workflow, the document catch check step is gone. We dropped that with an update in March. I'm going to go back and change this to contractor supplier is not in the system. I'm going to type new supplier. And this is if it's a new vendor, you didn't find them in AggieBuy. And this will stop with us. We're going to double check and make sure that vendor is not in AggieBuy. If they are not in AggieBuy, then a notification is sent to vendor setup. Then it goes, these are the same approvers. It comes back to contract administration, and then it will go to new vendor setup. And once new vendor setup creates the vendor, they will approve the contract request, and then we'll create the contract. One important thing to note is your form number. In case you give us a call or email us, we may ask for the form number. I'm going to go ahead and submit this request. And this is the contract. It takes you to my contract request. So the person that submitted the request, it will take you to this screen after you submit it. And you'll see this is the request that I just submitted. And it shows you it's in the document catch step because I selected the vendor was not in AggieBuy. If the vendor was in AggieBuy, it would have gone to the originator step. And while we're on this screen, I'm going to show you another way to get to it. You'll go to the ribbon, request, my contract request. It takes you to this screen. And if you've never looked at this screen before, click on the filter contract request. And not all of these are checked. I would recommend checking what I have: approved, incomplete, returned, and under review. If you submit a lot of requests, you may not want to see rejected or completed requests because it can be overwhelming, and you can search for those anytime. I know I went through that pretty quick. Does anybody have any questions on anything that I went over?
Do you want to talk about putting the member ID in front of the request name?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. What we're trying to do, because we have, I'm going to show you this screen, which you guys don't see, but we have 02, 04, 05, 10, 23 using Contracts Plus now. And Prairie View they're still in the pilot phase. They're not 100% live yet, but when contract requests are completing the workflow, they come to us on this screen to create the contract. And it's getting hard for us to see who the request belongs to. So Marie Johnson at Prairie View said, well, we'll start putting our member number in front of the request name. So it will look like this, the 05 dash in front of the contract request name. And it helps us a lot when we're reviewing the request, is seeing which member number this belongs to, instead of us having to go into each request and looking at the department and say, okay, well, that one's Tarleton's, they're going to take care of that one. I'm going in and changing them, or I'm adding the member number to the request. It just, again, it's been a huge help. So if y'all can do that in the request that you have going forward, it would help us greatly. Any other questions?
Question in chat, same process when we have an NDA, but no contract. Yes, so can you show them when the vendor does not have a document and we're going to be generating one from our template library?
Yes. So this is the request that I just created. I'm going to change this answer. Has the contractor supplier furnished a contract document? I'm going to answer no to that. And it brings up this contract award document section. And you said an NDA?
Yeah.
So I selected the non-disclosure agreement. I'm going to hit next, and then you'll see, okay, it didn't show that green box, but it saved what I did on that screen. And now I have another window that is showing up, and you'll see there's no green checkbox. So I have to answer questions, and depending on which award document you choose, the answers, or I'm sorry, the questions will change. So I'm going to say this is a 1-year agreement.
So on the NDA specifically, that disclosure period is the number of years that the information must be kept confidential. So it could be a 1-year agreement, but have a 5-year disclosure period. So those don't necessarily have to agree. But this is a great example of our template library that we have. So if you've got just a scope of work, or like they request an NDA, but there's no real documentation, but you know a contract is going to be needed, that's where you would say, no, the vendor has not given us anything and we're going to use our own. So then you can select an award document from here, and there's 51 different ones in there. It could be a general services agreement. It could be a clinical training affiliation. It could be consulting or professional services, the NDA, like Tammy just demonstrated, interagency, intersystem. So you don't necessarily have to have a document to submit a contract request. And generally, we prefer to use our templates because these have all been run through legal. These have been vetted, approved, and they're generally quicker to process on our end. So thank you for bringing that up as a question in the chat.
Yes, and if you have any old templates saved, like a speaker agreement, don't use those. They're probably out of date. We have clauses that change quite often, and it's best to use our templates. Anything else y'all want to see on a request?
And if everyone's good with the request, are there any other questions about the contracting process? Situations, documents, anything else that we're here to answer your questions? You've got a captive audience. All right, well, if that's it, thank you all so much for your time. We'll post this online in a few days when it comes through. And if you've got any questions that you want to wait until everybody else jumps off to ask, we'll hang out for just a few minutes. But thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, I don't know if can anyone hear me? I'm really struggling with my,
Yep, we can hear you.
okay, you can hear,
Yes.
okay. I'm asking because I came from Mays where we had a really, Barbara had worked on the contract request. I think there had been a panel kind of looking at the process review, and so we had a really streamlined contract request submit process. It's very straightforward. I've come over to ABS and I won't speak exactly to, I don't know their exact, all the processes steps. It sounds like they have a more convoluted process and they were kind of, they're kind of struggling with the steps that it takes them to get a contract request in. It sounded to me like they might be able to revise the number of approvals that they need or people that need to clear a request before it gets to the contract office. Is that possible? I mean, they can work with you, can they not, to kind of
Yeah.
streamline? Okay.
Absolutely. The workflows for the approvals
Mhm.
are basically 100% what the department tells us.
Okay, that's what I thought, because I was like, they were talking about it yesterday, and I said, I'll ask at the meeting, because I knew. And I just thought, I think, if you guys don't like this, you can change it. You just need to make the request to change. You just have to decide,
Yeah,
how you want
there's
to do it.
the routing comes from, so the president's delegation of authority for contract administration. There's a column in there that says routing for departmental review.
Okay,
It's pretty straightforward. It's just, contract originator, department head or unit director, dean, then contract administration. And it differs per contract type.
okay,
So most of the time that contract originator and unit director or dean or somebody, as long as someone in the college or in the department is clicking that button for approval, there doesn't need to be 2, 3, 4, 5 different people.
Yeah, that's what it was
click
sounding
approve.
like. I mean, I would submit them, Dean's office, if somebody would, usually it's Dean's office would approve. And then it would be right at contracts, not that that there weren't then slowdowns based on whatever the contract related to, or if it didn't have to come back, but
Yeah,
it sounds like it's taking a while for them to actually get it to y'all's desk. And I'm like, I think you guys can change that. You just have to decide how you want things to flow.
yeah. So I would recommend next steps, if you email Tammy
Okay,
and basically say, hey, we'd love to look at our workflow steps for, and then list out like if it's the entire college or if it's just a few departments within that college.
okay,
And then she's got basically a master spreadsheet that shows who is in what step.
okay,
And then y'all would basically just go through there and mark up whatever changes you want made and then send it back and we'll make it happen.
perfect, perfect. I'll let them know so they can kind of, I don't know that it's, they were kind of grumbling yesterday and I was like, I think you can fix this.
Yep.
I think that's doable. Okay, I will let them know. So you might be
Okay.
hearing from Emily or maybe Kim Andrews on that. So,
Okay.
Okay,
okay, thank you so much.
you're
Sure,
welcome.
thank you.
Thank
Sure,
you.
bye-bye.
Irene, did I answer your question about the Board of Regents?
Yeah, I was gonna go through my email just to read more about it, cause at first it was saying, we were familiar with like it's a total contract value exceed a certain amount. But then, I know there have been a little bit more flexibility depending on certain factors. So it just, with this time, I wanted to make sure there wasn't any new things, because it's been a while since I got a chance to get a contract request refresher. So this is
Okay.
very helpful. That was, yeah.
Yeah, so 2507 was just recently updated, but a lot of the Board of Regents stuff didn't change a lot. And essentially, if the annual cost is over $500,000, it's got to go to Board of Regents, but then there are exceptions outlined in there. So feel free to read through those. And if you've got questions or, hey, does this situation apply to my agreement? Feel free to email that contracts@tamu.edu and someone in our office will certainly respond and let you know, yes, this has to go to the Board of Regents, or no, this is exempt because XYZ, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.